Hello everyone, welcome back to Dakota's Political Circle. And sorry guys, it's been a while since I made a video. I just wanted to bring one up now. So this video ain't going to be too important. It's just going to mainly talk about some stuff I just saw that just came up recently. I'm not sure what the video title is going to be called exactly. I might combine both these titles together, like the two things I'm talking about. I might combine both of them. Just because to make it interesting, because there's not been too much talked about in the recent days. There was some things a while ago, like the CR spending bill that passed, which I don't get to talk. I don't want to really talk about now because it's been a while since that happened. The JFK files did release today, by the way. I believe it was 80,000 files. From what I saw, most of them were unredacted. Now, I'm not going to post a video about it today, but I'm going to wait a little while, probably maybe a week or 2 weeks, because I want to see if people find more evidence in that 80,000 files to see something interesting about it. But I'm not going to go through 80,000 files, so it's probably a good idea for other people to do it. And when they find some interesting things in it, I'll definitely post a video on reviewing the JFK files and bring stuff up on that. So that'll be a big video eventually. But they did release today, so I will definitely get to them once more people review the files and stuff like that. But I did see some interesting things that came up after release, so that's really interesting. But just to talk about these specific things that were in the title of the video. So the first thing is, the Chief Justice John Roberts was pushing back against Trump, calling to impeach judges who rule against him. Now, in my opinion, I think these activist judges, these judges that keep going against everything the president goes for, it's very, very annoying in my opinion. Now, I understand there's checks and balances. It makes a lot of sense why this is in place, but at the same time, there's a lot of corruption. When it comes to certain judges, they go against rulings that literally make no sense. Now, there is certain rulings that make a lot of sense, like constitutional rulings. Like, for example, even though I agree with Trump on, taking away birthright citizenship to an extent, it makes sense why judges are striking that down and trying to push it to the Supreme Court. I completely agree with that. But then there's certain things like, the wall shouldn't be made because of environmental protection. And stuff like that, like protecting lands and everything like that. But it's literally the federal government, and you got voted in democratically. It's literally something you shouldn't be going against in court whatsoever. There's just certain things I don't think should be pushed against a president, because it makes no sense, because it's not unconstitutional. It's more or less just activist judges that don't agree with what you're doing, so they just push it through the courts to make it a longer process, which I think is absurd. Now, getting into the actual thing here, talking about what it's actually about. So, Justice John Roberts issued a rare statement Tuesday rebuking President Trump and his allies, calling for impeachment to impeach judges who have ruled against the administration. And Justice John Roberts said, "For more than 2 centuries, it has been established that impeachment is not an appropriate response to disagreements concerning a judicial decision. The normal appellate review process exists for that purpose," which to a degree he is right, but I don't think John Roberts completely understands that a lot of these judges are just doing it out of spite and not out of actual constitutional basis. Now, Trump allies have called for various judges to be impeached for blocking administration policies in the first months of his second term. But Trump himself raised the stakes Tuesday when he called for the impeachment of U.S. District Court Judge James Boasberg after he blocked the deportation of Venezuelan migrants. This judge, like many other crooked judges I am forced to appear before, should be impeached. And then Trump responded to Roberts during a Fox News interview, saying many people have called for Boasberg's impeachment. Trump added that he never did defy a court order, which is true. He didn't defy it. He actually did it. He actually went over international waters, so it didn't apply to him at the time. So it makes sense. When asked by, Laura Ingraham whether he would defy a court order going forward, Trump said, "No, you can't do that. However, we have bad judges. We have very bad judges. These judges that shouldn't be allowed. I think that at a certain point you should start looking at what do you do when you have a rogue judge." Trump said he believes the Supreme Court will ultimately rule in his favor of the administration in this matter, which I completely agree. Now, I think He claimed Boseborough had an impeachable offense by issuing a temporary restraining order against the administration over its novel invocation of the wartime law called the Aliens Enemies Act to deport certain illegal immigrants. Now, by the way, this wartime law is, I mean, he can actually invoke it. Like, this is something he can invoke. Now, these judges are going to say how, oh, it's unconstitutional because it's such an old law that it shouldn't count. Now, I think that's absurd because, I mean, it's still a law. You could have, like, taken this law a long time ago and just went away with it. But instead, you leave it in place, and then a president can easily just bring it back up. So it's very stupid that, you know, these judges just go against everything he can. Like, I know this is a specific case, but when it comes to other things like, you know, like I talked about the border wall funding, allocating funds. Then there's the border wall funding where it's like a lot of courts have gone against it because it's in certain lands, like certain sacred lands. You shouldn't do it whatsoever, even though federally, that land right there is specifically the federal government's. Literally on the border is literally the federal government's land. I don't understand why it's contested. It makes zero sense to me. Everyone says it's environmental regulations and everything like that. It's just absurd. You're the federal government. It shouldn't matter. Now, I am a big supporter of, you know, going away from the federal government and not always, you know, being for the federal government, but certain things like that specifically are just absurd in my opinion. And there's many activist judges, which they talked about, that specific one where almost every case that guy, you know, goes with is just against the Trump administration. And you just know it, obviously. And in my opinion, I think judges that go based off of, you know, personal views and no constitutional merit whatsoever, those judges should be impeached. And it makes a lot of sense why Trump is saying this. John Roberts, I think, is being whiny because he's more about like the specific laws in general. Like, John Roberts agrees that no matter what, even though there is crooked judges, it's the rule of the law. That's just how it works. That's the rule of the land. You cannot go against that. You cannot impeach people for that. Now, he didn't say you can't impeach them, but he more or less said how it's not an appropriate response, which I think is absurd, especially when maybe if it was like, you know, all judges or like any judge that you don't agree with. But I think it's different when it comes to when it's not a constitutional basis. It's more or less just them not agreeing with you and they just want to go against you no matter what. Those are the judges that should be impeached. And then bringing up like this specifically, like how he said, I know he didn't say you can't do it, but just bringing it up, he said, can there be impeachments against judges going against the administration's actions by issuing orders against them? So in the United States, yes, federal judges can technically be impeached, which it is rare, not specifically tied to issuing orders though. But the Constitution allows for impeachment of civil officers, including federal judges, for treason, bribery, or high crimes and misdemeanors. This process starts in the House of Representatives, which can vote to impeach, followed by a trial in the Senate, where a 2/3 vote is needed to convict and remove the judge. Now, the bad thing is that wouldn't happen because we don't have 2/3 majority. But I do think it's a good idea to at least impeach him because, you know, actually put him up for impeachment because what he's doing is wrong. But historically, judges have been impeached for corruption, which is true, abuse of power, and or serious misconduct, not typically rulings alone. Even if they clash with the administration's agenda, in 1804, Justice Samuel Chase was impeached by the House for politically biased rulings, but acquitted by the Senate. This is what I mean. This is exactly what we should do. We should impeach these judges. Now, obviously, they would get acquitted because we don't have 2/3 majority. But I do think it's a good idea to, at the very least, show these judges that we aren't to be messed with, especially when it comes to judges that are literally corrupt and abusing power, which is that specific judge especially. And then a judge issuing orders against an administration like blocking an executive action wouldn't automatically trigger impeachment, which is true. It'd have to be framed as an egregious overreach or misconduct. So in my opinion, I think it is because of the several rulings he's won against the Trump administration. So I think that's the big red flag there. Now, if it's only one ruling, that's a little bit different. So I completely agree with that. But I think people like that should be impeached no matter what. And John Roberts is just an idiot. But going with the next thing I wanted to talk about today, I don't know if it's in the title or not. It could be. I just can't remember. I just don't know if I'm going to put it in the title or not. I also want to talk about Thomas Massie. Now, Thomas Massie, in my opinion, I kind of like Thomas Massie. Like, I thought Thomas Massie was kind of cool. I thought he was, a possible future senator, like another Rand Paul. But in my opinion, he's idiotic. I think Thomas Massie is... I wouldn't call him a rhino per se, but I wouldn't call him a Trump guy. I'd say he's kind of like a McConnell type, but more to the right of McConnell. I'd say Massie is someone that just wants to push away from doing anything in government and anything that involves money, and he just wants to lower the national debt, which I agree with lowering the national debt, but he wants to push away against any form of integration that raises the debt at all. So that means helping average Americans. So he's always just against almost anything the Trump administration does when it comes to that. So he's been pushed out to look like a rhino. In my opinion, I don't think he's a rhino, but I don't think he's a good person that should be in the House of Representatives and representing the people of Kentucky. Now, Trump is vowing to lead the charge to unseat him. Now, in my personal opinion, I don't think he can be unseated when it comes to the House, but I do think it's possible if he runs for Senate, he will not win because Trump matters more statewide. But this is specifically what he did. So Trump said Monday he will lead the charge to oust Thomas Massie for his refusal to support the Republican government funding bill, which I said why that is the case. A doctrine libertarian, Massie has a persistent thorn in the side for both Trump and the House Speaker. By defecting on key votes, Thomas Massie of the beautiful Kentucky has an automatic no vote on just about everything Trump said in a true social post. Trump said Massie should be primaried, and I will take the charge against him. He compared the Kentucky Republican to Liz Cheney. I'd say that's a decent comparison. I wouldn't say it's like a good comparison, but I'd say it's similar. It's similar for sure because Liz Cheney I wouldn't say she was probably a little bit more conservative in a way than Thomas Massie, but Liz Cheney was more anti-Trump than Thomas Massie is. I think Thomas Massie just goes off of his own values, but his values are kind of hurting the Republican Party's agenda in general, and he's worse than Rand Paul. But Trump previously tried unsuccessfully, which I already knew this, but Trump has previously unsuccessfully to oust Massie, who signaled on Monday he is not afraid of another Trump-backed primary challenger. 3 times I've have had a challenger who tried to be more MAGA than me. None busted 25% because my constituents prefer transparency and principle over blind allegiance. Massie said he will oppose the short-term government spending measure because it keeps federal funding at 2024 levels without enshrining the Doge cuts has made. So more or less, like I said, he wants to lower government spending, which I think is a good thing. But at the same time, you got to understand that we got to help the American people as well. Like there has to be a mix of both in there. You can't just outright say no because it's showing that it's going to be at the same levels. Well, of course, because you're going to be adding so many new things like no tax on tips, no tax on Social Security, all that kind of stuff. And in my personal opinion, I do agree that if Trump did try to oust Massie again, he would just end up the challenger would just end up losing. But if Massie runs for Senate, I think Massie gets beat. Maybe by a close margin. I think it would be close in a primary, but I do think the Trump-backed candidate would end up winning over Massie. And then, most notably, Massie refused to support Johnson's re-election as Speaker on January 3rd and vote for a Republican budget bill last month. Now, I think the re-election on Speaker, I think it was more on lines that he didn't agree with Speaker Johnson and thought he was someone that would just keep giving to Israel and Ukraine and stuff like that. Which I agree with his sentiments on that. But when it comes to the budget bill, I think he's more just pushing his personal opinion because he's one of those libertarians that want to save a lot of money, which I agree with. But at the same time, I think he doesn't want to improve the government in any way because it costs money, and that's the only bad thing I don't like about Massie. I don't think he's a rhino. I don't think he's Liz Cheney, but I think there's some similarities you can see there. And then also right here, I also want to talk about this. This actually made me irritated. This actually like pissed me off. So Congressman Thomas Massie issued a statement to President Trump regarding the strikes on terrorists in the Middle East. To strike Iran requires a vote of Congress because it's an act of war. So Thomas Massie, because of Trump talking about possibly saying they're gonna strike terrorists in the Middle East, referencing possibly Iran, Thomas Massie had to bring up, oh, it requires a vote of Congress because it's an act of war. It's not an act of war unless you're going to war with Iran. This is more of like a strike on the terrorists. This isn't a war on Iran entirely. And also, by the way, presidents in the past, even if it does involve war, have, initiated war without the approval of Congress, and nothing's came up about it. Like, for example, there's the Korean War. I think it was Harry S. Truman. Didn't get approval of Congress. He did the Korean War, and he didn't get an approval whatsoever, and he still did it. He didn't get in trouble for it. And I think in this situation, and also there's Obama. I can't remember what Obama did, but I know there was a place he did strikes in a mini war without the active approval of Congress. I can't remember what it was exactly though. But Trump can do the same thing, and I think Thomas Massie's just being an idiot here. And I know legally, technically, he is correct about, oh, you need a vote of Congress to do an act of war. Technically, you are correct, but at the same time, he's wrong because the president does have authority in the Constitution to defend itself, attack people, stuff like that. But an act of more or less Congress, it's more of like a formal approval. That's how it basically is. But because Thomas Massie has to be an idiot here, he just wants to bring up this. And I think it's because Thomas Massie doesn't want to, attack terrorists because it involves maybe attacking Iran, which, by the way, Iran is not really an ally of ours. So I really don't see the issue whatsoever. I think just Thomas Massie's an idiot and becoming more and more rhino-esque. Now, he's not a rhino, but he is definitely becoming more anti-Trump, and it's becoming very, very annoying. He's not a key vote in the House, but he does make it very slim when he always votes no. So that's also very annoying. But also to bring up this. So I also wanted to bring up the Senate race in Kentucky just to show you guys that potential people that actually could be in it. Now, it does say Thomas Massie declined to run for the Senate, but it is still possible he could be running because a lot of people are talking about it in the background. But just to show you guys, Mitch McConnell will not be running re-election in 2026. So Thomas Massie could be an option, which would be quite literally annoying if that happened. Now, Daniel Cameron is the one that is officially running so far, which I'm kind of worried about because I don't think that's a good idea because of how he failed before running for governor. Then there's also interest from Andy Barr, Nate Morris, which is really interesting. Now, I don't think Trump's endorsed anyone yet, from what I know. But I'm hoping that someone else could get in there. It could be possible for some others. There's some potential ones like Kelly Craft. Scott Jennings would be pretty cool. I think Scott Jennings would be kind of cool. But, he is also kind of an advisor to Senator McConnell, so I wouldn't be happy about that. There's some others in there as well. Now, there is some that declined, obviously, like Mitch McConnell. Thomas Massie did decline, but it is possible he could switch around. Honestly, I believe he could. If Thomas Massie does, I think it's really going to depend. Like, if you look right here, just like I said, if it is Thomas Massie that did decide to run against Daniel Cameron, you got 39% that are undecided. I think it would be close if it was that case. I think Daniel Cameron would probably win over Thomas Massie by a certain amount if, Trump endorsed him. But I did want to bring that up as well because a lot of people have talked about how Thomas Massie might run for the Senate position in Kentucky, and if he did, I'd be completely annoyed because he'd go against Trump's agenda regardless. But I think Daniel Cameron would do a good job, even though I'd be kind of worried who he'd run against because it is possible that Kentucky could vote for someone else because they really didn't like Daniel Cameron before against the governorship. But I just want to talk to you guys about that today. Talked about the Chief Justice thing, and also talked about Thomas Massie, which Thomas Massie has been like a thorn in Trump's side as of right now. But yeah, guys, I do hope you guys enjoyed this video. Just kind of wanted to talk about these things. I couldn't really think of anything else to talk about today, and I haven't made a video in a couple of days, so I just wanted to bring something up. I'll definitely talk about the JFK files soon enough. I'll probably talk about them maybe like a week or 2 weeks, depending on when more and more information comes out of those 80,000 files. I'll definitely talk about more about that, bring up certain examples and everything like that. So far, I've only seen one interesting thing that came out of the JFK files that's really interesting that was, redacted before. So I'll definitely talk about that when that eventually comes. But yeah, guys, let me know in the comments how you feel about the Chief Justice saying that, and also, Thomas Massie, how you feel about Thomas Massie. In my opinion, I think Thomas Massie is just like a thorn in Trump's side. He has some good viewpoints, but at the same time, he's just really, really becoming that middle ground House of Representative that you really don't want to deal with when it comes to your agenda in general. But anyway, guys, let me know in the comments how you feel about that. But yeah, guys, I'm not sure when my next video will be out, but I will definitely make a video sometime soon when more information comes out about more political news. But anyway, guys, let me know in the comments how you feel about what I talked about in this video. Anyway, guys, I hope you guys enjoyed. Thank you guys so much for watching. I'll see you guys in the next one.